Hello. Today we're looking at some Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition. What I was thinking of looking at was something that confuses some people, and I've had a few questions about, so I thought I'd expand on what's written or not written as such in some of the text. What we're looking at today is surprise and initiative. So what we have here is a sample of a room for an encounter. We have some party members coming up from this end here, and through here we'll have a fighter magic user, a thief, ranger and a cleric. Not an exact mix, but close enough. So what's happened here is that they've come up through the corridor, opened up the door, which opens up in this fashion, and they've moved in. Each one of these little squares represents 1 foot. So this is a 30 by 30 foot room. Because they're just standing around not doing anything, they're able to just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without really worrying about too much space. They'll just exist all in this spot here. So the actions of them coming into the room, they see some chests, wardrobe, there's another chest next to that one, a table, bookshelf, another bookshelf, and a table with documentation, documents, maps, and so on. So the party have decided that they're going to move around the room, and with the thief moving here to open locks, find, remove traps, open locks, etc. The fighter magic user is going straight up here, and the fighter here, leaving the ranger here as a bit of a guard slash backup, and the cleric out here to protect them if anything comes in from this angle. So in a normal movement, the fighter and the fighter magic user, both wearing chainmail armor, have 9 feet per segment as a move. So from here, they're within a minute, within the first round of arriving, they're able to make their goals and start. The thief is going to need between 5 and 10 rounds to open up each lock and to investigate each chest. That will also take about 10 rounds to investigate the documents on the table, and once here it will take also about 10 rounds or 10 minutes to fully investigate this large bookshelf, and this one might take half the time. So the party have moved in, the DM's described the room, and they've all engaged in their actions. Unbeknownst to the party, some orcs are coming in this way. So 4 orcs will be coming in through here. Remember, the ranger is on guard here, bow ready, and the cleric as the backup. So the first thing that we do is we work out if there is any surprise. So a ranger is surprised on a 1 in 6, meaning on a 6-sided dice, result of a 1, the whole party will be surprised. You go by the value of the best surprise roll. In this instance, the ranger on a 1. Most creatures are a 1 or a 2 for surprise, and that will include the orcs that will be moving in. So the next step we do is roll for initiative. Sorry, roll for surprise. Rolling for surprise. This will be the players, this will be the orcs. First the players, are they surprised? No. Players are not surprised. Are the orcs surprised? Yes, the orcs are surprised. So the way that this would be described is that as the orcs were coming down through this corridor, being too busy just amongst themselves and talking or just being engaged in other activities, not even realizing that there are people in this room have just walked straight through. And in the meantime, the ranger has sort of heard or felt that something is coming through here. A ranger with their heightened senses and their alarm sense almost felt that there was something happening and made a quick sound to alert and ready everybody here that something was coming. And so now they're surprised. So the orcs have come blustering through, and that difference of surprise of 2 to 5 is what we use. So the party have 3 segments, 3 full rounds almost, as it's in surprise, of activity and combat. So when the orcs move in, they'll be in just 1, 2, 3, 4, coming through in the door, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we start the surprise rounds, which still go in the initiative order rounds. So if this party, being the players, chose to run, now would be the time for them to all flee and get out. If they chose to try and talk their way out, that is also an option. They're not going to do either of those. It's going to take, because the fighter is here, the fighter magic user is there, it's going to take a full round of movement for either of them to engage here. So what the players have decided is for that first turn, or the first combat round, I should say, let the ranger have the shots. So the ranger, with 17 dexterity and +2 to hit, has 2 opportunities to attack, choosing the first one closest here and then the second one there for 1. So first one here, and with a 13 hits, and for damage 6, which is enough to put an arrow in the head and eliminate orc number 1. So orc number 2, miss. And that would be the first segment, which is the same as a full round in surprise because it's in surprise. The thief continues on doing what the thief does. These 2 move to engage. And that's a full round. Movement occurs after missile fire. So before they get to do 1 more shot or move, the ranger gets 1 more shot, which is a miss. Then they move in. The ranger can then have a second shot, but is now considered firing into melee with 3 orc targets and 2 friendly targets. Choosing to not fire into melee, he drops the bow. Now comes the third surprise round. Movement is first, and the ranger is able to use the full movement and all actions to join the fray. You have an orc here, here, and here. This has moved over to here. So the fighter magic user has a 4-foot range with those weapons, or 3-foot range, sorry, with the weapons, and needs that much space. The fighter, who can engage over here, also needs that much space. The ranger is not going to be able to engage in melee for a lack of space, because the orcs have been surprised and there is no movement available for the orcs. They've been standing there caught flat-footed, so they haven't been able to engage with the party on equal terms. So this last round of surprise, fighter magic user, one shot, hits, 6 damage, kills the orc. The fighter hits, 1 damage. Now we come down to initiative. There are 2 orcs remaining. And those 2. And the door is wide open. So the orcs may choose to flee. And this is where the order comes in terms of initiative. The orcs, if they flee, present themselves with an opportunity for the opponents to attack, but they'll only get 1, and the other orc will be able to escape. If they lose initiative and the party win, there's a chance that the party will be able to eliminate both orcs. So first the party, with the 2, and the orcs, with the 3. So these 2 orcs, using the first section of the round, choose to flee with with the fighter here being able to get 1 opportunity attack and misses. The orcs scarper. So now we're rolling for surprise. First, the party. The ranger has a 1 in 6. The party are not surprised. The orcs have a 2 in 6. And they are surprised. This time, surprising the orcs on a 1 versus a 2. There's 1 round of surprise. So the way that, again, this is measured is very similar, except that rather than having lots of forewarning between what the ranger hears and observes, it's at the last minute almost. As the orcs have come through, the ranger has probably maybe heard them scratch at the door handle, and hold over and made some noise to get everybody ready. The orcs walk in flat-footed, but this time for 1 round. In a similar vein, the orcs come in, and with 1 round available to them, the players have decided to use segment move for these guys, for the fighter and for the fighter magic user, to move 9 feet in this instance. It's going to take a full combat round for them to get through, and with all their actions, because it's past 9 feet. Because they have a 9-inch movement, they have 9 feet per segment, and if they're going to engage in combat, they get 9 feet and still able to engage in a combat action. If they need to move further than that, a charge move would take them to about approximately 14-15 feet, but then anything beyond that is a full movement regardless, and uses up all their movement. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the fighter magic user may almost make it with a normal combat move. Well, be about there. If the fighter magic user is here, make it to about there. So from there to about there. The fighter is always going to need to use full movement. So in this one round, because movement also happens after missile fire, firing at this one first, the ranger has a shot and misses. Fighter magic user here, the fighter moves, being able to position anywhere on this far side, so his 3 foot range, and 3 foot radius required for his weapon, can easily engage with 1, maybe 2 on this side and not be flanked. The ranger still gets 1 more shot. There's no firing to melee as no melee is engaged. Choosing the same target. And hits. Inflicting 4 damage, which is enough to remove orc number 1. Initiative. The orcs move to engage. DM knows the orcs are going to engage with 1 here, those 2 against this, for the sake of racial hatred, and the ranger. The players have declared combat, and the ranger is going to have the option of firing a bow at this point. So the players, 6, which is pretty good, versus a 1. Players go first. They're not fleeing, they're not going to try and talk to the orcs. Missile fire is next. The ranger gets 1 shot and misses. Movement. Engage, engage, and away we go. And combat. Fighter magic user hits, doing 2 damage. The fighter misses, and now it's the orc's turn. So we have 2 orcs against this one. Orc number 2 in effect, no. Orc number 3, no. And this orc against that fighter, no. Now we come to initiative. The ranger is going to be moving, and away we go. So this is how combat would normally work in 1st edition AD&D. Roll for initiative. Away we go. Exactly as before. Remember, the cleric is out here, still able to engage. If it moves in and so on, or protect the back. And the thief is doing exactly what thieves do. Happily exploring for something valuable while the heavy lifting gets done. So now we're rolling for surprise. Players, orcs. Player surprise 1 in 6. Players not surprised Orc surprised 1 or a 2. Not surprised. So the way that this one would be explained is that while activity is happening in here, the ranger senses something coming through there, whether here's a scrape or whether it can just feel that there's a little bit of activity happening out here. Warns everybody to be prepared at the same time or a similar time as the orcs are coming down here. They're thinking, is that noise I'm hearing in this empty room? So clearly not empty, even by their standards. Draw weapons and get ready for a fight. The door opens, they march in. Neither are surprised. Fighter magic user, fighter, thief, ranger, cleric. And initiative is rolled. Well, actions are going to be sorted out. Ranger's still going to have a shot with the bow, if you can. Melee, melee, and then work it all out from there. The orcs will move to engage as they can, 2 this way, 2 that way. So, player's initiative roll is 2. Orcs initiative is 1. So the players go first. Players aren't going to flee, they're not going to talk their way out of it. Missile fire. And more importantly, the magic user is also not going to cast any spells. So first missile fire from the ranger against the first one and misses. Then movement from here, charge there, that's a charge. And this fighter moves a full move over here to be able to engage freely. And this has got this bit here, needing the amount of space required. The ranger can still move, fired 1 shot, discard the bow and move. There's just not a lot of space. So, might move to here and hopefully combat can peel them back. Charge, misses, and of course, having charged, the fighter magic user is now at a disadvantage on the armor class, making it easier to hit. Fighter moved, and the ranger moved. Then it's the orc's turn. Orc 1. The orcs are going to move, so this one has moved over to here. Remember, the ranger moved to about here. This orc moved over to here to engage on that side. So you've got 2 orcs there, and this one has moved over to here to engage there. Here. And the orcs miss, even with all the additional modifiers. This orc also misses. Orc 3 versus the fighter misses. Orc 4 versus the fighter also misses. Lots of missing. That's fine. Now we come to round 2 of combat, and it's initiative. Now with some targets of choice, the ranger is able to engage with here or there, and chooses to assist the fighter magic user. Players roll a 4 and a 3. So players go first. Movement happens first, and then we're in combat. We'll do the fighter magic user first against the 1, and hits, doing 2 damage. Ranger, missed, fighter, hits, doing 1 damage, and so on. Then the orcs have their response. Then we roll for initiative again, and again. So for this next part, I'm just going to fudge a few rolls, just so that way I can highlight how some activities work. That's the prerogative of a good DM anyway, being able to just do what they want to do. I believe the quote is, DMs like to roll dice because they like the sound. Who doesn't like that sound? So if we've assumed that both parties of the orcs coming through and the party engaged are not surprised, initiative is rolled. Players roll a 3. Sorry, wrong dice. Players roll a 3. The orcs roll a 4. Choose that specifically because the ranger, if you remember way back when, has 17 dex, which gives the ranger +2 missile bonus to hit. It gives the ranger a +2 modifier on surprise rounds. So when you've got 3, 4, or 5 surprise rounds, the modifier allows the dexterity modifier adjusts that. So if the instance where if the players were surprised by 2 or 3 rounds, by 2 rounds, the ranger wouldn't be surprised at all, in which case then no one is surprised on the party side, and we just go straight into initiative. That's pretty much the benefit of having such a high dexterity. So in this instance, the ranger is ready with the bow. The modifier of dexterity, the reaction modifier, which adjusts the surprise rounds, also affects this number when firing missiles. Only when firing missiles. So what this means is that the orcs have come through, neither a party have surprised, ready for combat, roll for initiative. The orcs will move first, missile fire. The ranger goes first. So the ranger makes an 18, does 5 damage, killing one of the orcs with an arrow to the head, as opposed to an arrow to the chest, leaving 3 orcs there. Fighter magic user, fighter, ranger, thief, cleric. The orcs now move. This one, which was in charging range, is no longer the closest, and this orc is potentially out of range. It's a line ball decision, but the DM's gone for it anyway. These other 2 orcs will use their full movement to go anywhere in the room they wish. to position. One will come here, and this one go over here. Charge, miss, and the orc is at disadvantage because of the charge, with a penalty to the armor class. The other movement, no other combat. Player's turn. This one. So now it's the player's turn. The players have an option of fleeing, which would give some opportunity for attack. They could try and talk, and so on. So now it's move. This one's already engaged. The fighter can choose to move forward and engage here, which does. And it's ready for combat. Fighter magic user. Missed. Fighter hits for 5 damage, killing the orc. Over here we've got an orc there, and we've got full-on melee here. At the end of the round we have our second shot. You can fire at this orc with no modifier for, or no penalty for, or chance of firing to melee. And hits. Doing 6 damage to the head. And then we move to initiative. So that's an overview of surprise and initiative. The 2 head messes regarding surprise, well, the 1 head mess regarding surprise, 1 head mess, major head mess regarding initiative that I didn't go through, but I'll briefly cover now. When the original party were rolling for surprise, if the ranger had rolled a 1, meaning the party was surprised, because the ranger is surprised on a 1 in 6. And the, where are we? There we are. 2. And the orcs had a 2. What would happen is that the orcs are surprised for 1 round. In effect, they're surprised for 1 round, they're surprised for 2 rounds, because both are surprised. But we've got an initiative, we've got an advantage here, and so that would allow the orcs to be attacked with 1 segment of surprise. Likewise, if the orcs rolled a 1 and the ranger rolled a 1, then the ranger and the orcs will still be surprised. So it gets a little bit confusing when you're dealing with specialist surprise units like orcs, like rangers or ettins, monks who use percentile dice rather than d6s or something usable. And in those cases, what you're looking at is having to convert everything into percentages and working out sixths of values and so on. It does get messy. when you start putting in some of these other abilities. But for the most part, a 1 in 6 for a ranger means that they're obviously not going to be surprised 5/8 of the time, but when they are surprised, they're not going to be surprised for much. And if the orc had rolled a 6, then the players would have been caught seriously flat-footed, and you're looking at a start of 5 rounds, of 5 segments of surprise against the players. The difference between the 1 and the 6. And then modified by the dexterity of the ranger, bringing it down. That happens on an equal level across the board. So the thief with the 18 dexterity goes to a +3 modifier. So they, against the thief is, you're looking at the rounds being reduced from 5 to 2 because the thief has an 18 and so on. And you work it out based on the highest within those sorts of rounds. But the idea is that the surprise rounds are modified by the reaction modifier, and then if use the best value to work it out, so then to get it close to initiative. The other head mess regarding initiative is if the fighter magic user had decided to cast magic missile, and magic missile is probably not so much of an issue because it's casting time 1. But once you start to get casting time 2 and 3 for the more powerful spells, the difference between the numbers becomes important. So the orcs win. And that one, any spellcasting attempt that's disrupted will disrupt the spell and make it lost. If it's an equal, then it's the speed factor of the weapon and the timing of the weapon. So if they're charging, they're versus, that sort of thing. If they hit and connect, then the spell is lost, and so on. If the spell, whilst the spell is only 1 segment in size, so magic missile, you cast your spell, wave your hands, verbal and somatic, boom, there you go, kapow. The effect of it still happens later, and you can still get disrupted if you get hit before that spell casting phase. If here, so now we're starting to get into some head messes. So what we want to be looking at is something like that. Then you're looking at the opponent is actually operating at the higher value. Meaning, if the magic user was casting magic missile, that would still go off and fire, and the players, and they'd be fine. A device, magical devices, magical scroll readings, and all of those, that would still be in effect the same and all go off like normal. But if you were casting web, which is segment 2, the fireball, which is segment 3, lightning bolt, which requires 3 segments. In this instance, the magic user would be caught out because the 2, and it would even happen on a 3 with the 3 segment casting times. And this is where casting spells in melee gets rough and tumble. Once you start to get to levels 7 and up, you want to start putting spells into scrolls, so that way it makes it easier to use. In first edition, using spells during combat is not potentially the first thing, but who doesn't love casting Fireball, and who doesn't love casting massive spells? But that comes at a cost. You're hoping for a considerably higher dice roll. So if you win with a 6 or a 5, then you've pretty much got Rain with segments 1, 2 and 3 spells. If you win with a 4 and an up, you got range with a segment, so that sort of thing. And so that's what you want to watch out for when you're choosing to cast spells. It's the quick fire spells that you want to try and get off, or using the devices such as wands, staves, rods, scrolls, and other magical effects. So that's the major head mess when it comes to initiative and when it comes to surprise. But overall, it's really quite a straightforward process. You get used to it. It's like you learn to love the chains that you live with. And first edition AD&D is full of some of those little nuance, very unique items. And remember, it was 1978 or so. So it does deserve a little bit of breathing space. So hopefully this helps along the way with some understanding. It's not as complicated as it's really made out to be, and it's a lot of fun once you start to get to play. So these are the reprint books of the core 3. But other books, the originals, are floating around and around. Thank you for your time, and that covers the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons component for this time. Thank you.